So jQuery. jQuery is essentially it is a JavaScript library. What a library is basically it's a bunch of code that somebody wrote that you can access and use to do other things. So a jQuery, it basically makes it a lot easier to manipulate your pages and do some different animation effects and different things versus you actually handwriting out the JavaScript. So basically it's a one-line command in jQuery would take you a lot of lines of JavaScript to do the exact same thing. And to show you, here is, so this is the actual jQuery library. And it is, if we go all the way down through it, almost 10,000 lines long. But if you look in here, all it is JavaScript. It's all it is. But they've coded the JavaScript to make it work a slightly different way, and we're going to go over that here in just a minute. jQuery is open source out there. So if you go to the jQuery site, they actually have really good documentation, so it's a really good thing to check up on. But somewhere on here, view source on GitHub. So jQuery is actually on GitHub, and if you wanted to, you want to take care of an issue that they have or add a feature, you can always fork this, do something, and then submit a pull request. So like right now, if you look in here, there are 70 issues. And these are just stuff, they're saying, hey, we need to fix these, like, okay, improve this offset, Ajax is always doing something, too much, and just all a bunch of issues. And then, you can always, take on what you see an issue, hey, I think I could fix this. Fork it, clone it, fix it, submit a pull request, which right now, they have 9 open pull requests from people that are fixing something, so you could always contribute if you wanted to in the future. Okay, the other cool thing about jQuery, as you guys know, all browsers are a little bit different, and they all interpret JavaScript slightly differently, so what it does in Chrome may act a little different in Internet Explorer, or will most definitely act different in the Internet Explorer. jQuery, in all these lines of code, they've actually basically made it so that it works the same on all browsers. So that's probably one of the biggest benefits of jQuery is if you use it, you don't have to worry about will it work on this browser or that browser. It's made so that it works on all browsers. Now the way we access this library, you can either, like in this case for this thing I've got going on the side here, I just download the actual jQuery file and just link to it same way you would link to a CSS file in your folder. Or just if you just need it really quick, you can use a CDN. CDN stands for Content Delivery Network. I think that's what it is. And basically it's a link, an actual link where you link to whatever content and it pulls it in, so that way you don't actually have to download it. The one downside is wherever you link it from, if that site goes down, your site is broken. The other problem is if you're linking it and you have a site up for a long time, they update the code and you don't know it, all of a sudden one day your site is just not going to be working the way it was and you have no idea why, and it's because somebody updated something. But for now, just show you how to use the CDN. So Google has this site called Hosted Libraries. It has a whole bunch of things like Angular, Angular Material, Dojo, don't know what that is. I don't know what most of these are. I haven't used most of them. But in here is jQuery. So they have different versions, the 1, 2, and 3 version. I just always usually pick the newest one. Copy that. And then just go into your head on your HTML document, which I already got this one from the other day, and just paste it in there. So when the browser loads up this file, it's instantly going to load up this as well. And to check that, if we go into here, this is that file, inspect, open console. Actually, let's go to open sources. And sources shows everything that the browser loaded up for this file, so you can see this folder and this file that I have. But then here's the actual CDN, and in here is this library, and there's the actual jQuery library. The .min, let's see if I can make that bigger. You can see this .min just means a minified version, so this is just super wide. It just doesn't have all the line breaks, all the formatting, because that just takes up space. So that's why it's a minified version. But you notice that without doing anything, just a simple CDN, this whole file is loaded up automatically in a browser, so it knows where to find stuff. So let's do some jQuery. Now jQuery works, it uses the $symbol, and you do it inside of script tags exactly the same you do your JavaScript. So it's in the same place because, again, jQuery is JavaScript, so it runs the same way. But the way it knows you're doing jQuery is the $sign. So you start with the $sign, and then in here you have what's called a selector, and then you're looking for, in fact, we'll just say selector, event listener, action. This is generally what a jQuery command is made up of. So first the $sign says, hey, this is a jQuery function, so look it up in the jQuery library. And then selector. This selector is exactly the same thing as your CSS selector. So the same way, like if you want to do something with this H1, you would select an H1 in here, just like you do on CSS. The only difference is it has to be inside of quotes. Then .event, the event listener, this is what jQuery is listening for. jQuery is event-based, meaning it waits for an event to happen to do something. Could be the mouse clicking on something, the user hitting a key, hovering over a button, some sort of event, some sort of action. And it listens for it. And when it happens on this whatever you select, then it runs this action, which is normally a function. And just briefly, they call this a callback function. So it's a callback function is a function that runs after something happens when you tell it to. So it's like you've defined it, then something happens, and it calls back to that function to run it. Don't worry too much about understanding callbacks. It's a little more complicated. You'll worry about that when you do the mean stack. Just know that selector, something happening, do something when that thing happens to the selector. Now to start up jQuery, and this is the one different selector, we do document. And document is, if anybody of you have read up on the DOM, this entire thing is the DOM, some mystical thing called the Document Object Model. So what we're going to say is we're selecting the entire document. The event that we're listening for is for that whole document to be ready. Once it's ready, we're going to run this function. What are we going to run? Let's just console log jQuery is up and running. So save that, and if we refresh, you see it log jQuery is up and running. So what just happened there? This .ready waits for this whole document to load up. So the browser will actually load up all your entire file, your HTML, CSS, apply the styling, and then once that's all done, it's considered ready, and that's when this event fires off and it runs this function. And then normally most of your stuff will be run inside of here. Tomorrow we'll go into more advanced stuff where you'll do other places you'll run it. So okay, so now document's ready. Now let's go ahead and define some things we want to do. Cool thing with jQuery, when you pick out elements, you can either get something from that element or you can set that element. So let's just do a basic thing. Let's just say, and you'll probably see this in platform, let's just create a button, and the button just simply says click me. And so up here, I'm going to call the jQuery library, select the button, and it has a .click listener, so we'll just say .click. And we want to do something when someone clicks on that button. What do we want to do? Let's pop up an alert. You clicked me. How dare you? So save that. refresh. Here's the button. Make this a little bit bigger. And if we click it, there's the alert. So notice we didn't do anything on here. Document loaded up, nothing happens, but it's sitting there waiting just like Amazon Alexa and Xbox Connect, just waiting for you to do something and spying on you. And like I said, think of this as CSS, so if you were to style this button, you would just choose button and do that. Same thing, IDs and classes work exactly the same too. So let's just say you had multiple buttons, and let's just say this one is ID better button. No, click me instead. Alright, so here let's go ahead, call another jQuery. And this time, instead of just the regular button, we're going to call the ID exactly the same way how you would select it in the CSS. Say when we click that, and say logging is better than alerting. Oh, whatever. Okay, refresh this. We've got our two buttons. So let's click this one. Oh, it hit that. Why did it do that? Any ideas? Yeah. The ID is still a button, so it actually still ran this because we did click a button. So it ran the alert. But then as soon as we close the alert, because technically when this pop-up is open, it's kind of frozen here momentarily. And then it's like, oh, okay, wait, now I've done the alert, but you also click this ID. So let's just say, give this an ID of first button, change that, first button, and now it works. So now we're just the alert for the first one and just the log for the second one. So again, selecting just like CSS. Alright, and before we keep going on, let me talk about the jQuery documentation. Again, jQuery documentation is really good, so you'll want to refer to it. Google jQuery, it's the very first one. So on here, tells you some basics. This is where you would download it instead of using the CDN. But right here, API documentation. It's really good. So if you scroll through here, you can see all the stuff it does, like add back, after, append, blur, just all kinds of stuff. A lot of these you may not even use. A lot of these aren't even necessary anymore with CSS3. Like, what do we have here? Like technically hover, CSS3 does have a hover thing that works too, so some of this you don't even need all the time, but mouse down, mouse up, mouse leave, all kinds of stuff. So if you want to try some now, look through this documentation. So let's just say we want to do a, well, let's take a look at what we just did, .click. Go up here. There we go, .click. Let's click on that. And it just gives you a whole bunch of documentation for it, some examples. That didn't do any, oh, it's a figure, that's why. It's not interactive. So anyway, refer to that for things you want to do. Okay, so getter and setter. These are kind of more like setters. It's setting something. It's logging something. It's setting some to the console that we're telling it to. Let's go ahead and just create a form really quick. And let me make some space. Bring this up. I'm just going to do a very basic form with one single input type, text, ID, words. We'll just say type something here. Not worried too much about HTML. And then we'll do our submit type. Input submit for the submit button. Value submit. or just add word, whatever. Save that. Okay, so now here's our little form where we can add a word. Right now it's not doing anything, so we haven't told it to do anything. But what we can do up in a jQuery, we can go ahead and choose that form. And one of the functions jQuery has is a .submit. So just like .click, it's waiting for you to click on a button. Here it's going to wait for a form, this form, to be submitted. If you have multiple forms, obviously you want to identify them somehow. So we'll just say first form when you do that, just to be more specific. So when that's submitted, we want to do something. What do we want to do? Let's get the value that we typed in here and just log it to the console. So I'm going to create a variable, and it's just like JavaScript because it's based on it. So var info equals, but now I'm going to do a different jQuery thing, and I'm going to do a getter function. So I'm going to say when the form is submit, go ahead and select this words input, which is an ID, and I want to get the value of it. So this is a getter. Notice this time there's no action because I'm not doing anything, I'm not setting anything, I'm just getting something. So this line right here, all that highlighted, is going to be interpreted into whatever it is that I've typed into that input field. And I'm saving it into this variable, and then I'm going to console log that variable. Save that. Refresh. jQuery is still running. All right, typed in new word, add word. How closely were you watching? Did you guys see something?
Yeah.
Yeah, you saw something? What'd you see?
Stuff popped up on the console, then went back.
Okay, keep an eye on the console. Yep, flashed and went away. In one or two of your assignments in the future, you're going to run into this problem and forget what happened. So when we submit a form, HTML automatically assumes that you're submitting a form, you're going somewhere, sending data somewhere, you're expecting something back. So remember when we were talking about how the internet works and how when you type a URL, it sends out a request to a server and then expects a response? Well, forms are thinking that you're doing the same thing. It's saying you're sending a request for something to happen and you're expecting something back. So this page is refreshing. So what's happening is we submit the form, jQuery, because this is running, grabs it first, so it listens for the submit, and then we save that value in info, console log the info, which it logged, but then as soon as that's done, jQuery lets the form continue on with what it normally does, which is send that request, which causes the page to refresh. The way to stop that from happening, what does return do? Breaks out of a function. It kind of stops things. So we're going to return false. So we're just going to basically tell the browser, no, I'm not letting you keep going on. Just stop here. So did I save that? Hopefully I did. And this is going to be key when you guys start dealing with Ajax on Friday. So let's refresh that. Put in another word, misspelled, add. Then there it is. So this time, jQuery function grabbed it, ran it, logged it, returned false, so it would not let the browser refresh. And that log is still up there. Okay, so that's the getter. Why don't we do a different kind of setter?
Question?
Yep.
If you had code after that, would it just quit running it? If you kept, if you put your better button, click functions beneath where it returns false?
If it's inside of here, you talking about in here?
Yeah, or beneath it.
Yeah. Well, if it's inside of this jQuery function, because this is part of that function, the return will kick out. So if it's inside of there, it will not run once that return statement hits. So yeah, if you just put console.log after return false, refresh, actually, let me just go back to this one, throw in stuff, nothing logged. If we did something here, this will actually, outside of all functions, that's actually outside of that function, so we'll actually see it here. Because when this document loaded up, it was ready. This jQuery ran, function ran, it logged this. It read through all these, so it's listing for all these, and then we logged again. So it logged that right off the bat. It has nothing to do with this part of it. Yeah, if you want something else to run after this, then actually you don't want to return yet. You want to do whatever you want to do first. And that's actually what we want to do right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and create a div down here. And just give it an ID of container. Sure, let's just do container. Don't matter. Just something to hold it. And I'm going to do what you should never do. Command-Shift-D, that's it. Don't ever use those tags. But this isn't about CSS today. And let me just do one more thing. Don't ever do this either. Internal styling. What is it? Container. I just want to give it a border really quick just to differentiate it. And solid green. Okay. So, here's this div I just created. It's all green because I gave it a border, so it's displaying some. That just so we know it exists. So we want to go ahead and throw something in there. Why don't we go ahead and take the value that we typed in to the form, and shoot, let me just get rid of all these just so we're not looking at so much stuff. Okay. So we can do jQuery within jQuery and say, okay, we submit the form, we grab the value of the input field, saved into info, and now we want to select that div that I called container, and let's do append. And we're going to append whatever that info is to that container. And so let's refresh. This should be in the container now. Add. Oh, it flashed again. Yep, it's submitted the form. So after this, return false. Try that again. I don't feel like typing. And there it is, appending in there. So, and if I keep adding, and actually we can actually, using jQuery, because right now, I just want you to add the word that stays in there. So let's do this. Let's go ahead, and I think val might actually work as a setter also. Let's find out. Check the docs, go down to val. Way down here. Let's see. Okay, look, here's the interesting thing. So get the current value of the element in the set of matched elements, or set the value. So val with empty parentheses works as a getter. Val, if you pass something in, works as a setter. So why don't we try that? Let's see what happens. Let's do, I want to choose that input field that I've named words. I'm going to do .val again, but this time I'm going to pass it an empty string. Let's go ahead and refresh this. Something, add word, boom, appended, cleared the input field. Anyway, you can do lots of cool stuff like that. Something else you can do, just kind of wrap this up. I think I pulled this up somewhere. One of your assignments is going to be called jQuery functions, And basically you're just going to go through the documents and just pick out a bunch of the jQuery functions and create your own page. So this is that I did a while back. So I just made this page for each one, basically using it. So here's an add class, and this is a jQuery function. If you add class, when you click on, I did a jQuery that listens for when this is clicked, and when it's clicked, it adds a class. Or .after, .append, attribute, click that, changes the class attribute. You can actually change CSS with jQuery. Make sliders, a toggle slider, change the text, hide things, show things back up, add HTML. You do all kinds of stuff. So this is actually a good assignment when you get to it, to spend time, do all these, and use as your own documentation. Because obviously going through here, this is a lot to go through. I mean, it's really good documentation, though. It's actually not that bad. But when I was first going through this and learning jQuery, I actually pulled this up and pulled my code up and used that as my own documentation for myself. So I'm like, I want to make something fade out. Wait, how'd I do this? And then I would go to my code and just look to see how I did it really quick. Anyway, yeah, lots of cool things you can do with jQuery. When you do Ajax, you'll be using this too again. So any questions about anything? It's going to be a little shorter demo lecture today. Just going to go into a couple more advanced jQuery type things. I'm just going to continue on where we kind of left off yesterday. So I brought up the same thing I had. I don't need this form today. We'll leave this button because I'm going to use that here in a minute. I'm going to take off this alert because I don't want it to keep alerting me of stuff. So save that, just refresh, everything's still up and running. First thing I'm going to do, I'm just going to add an image inside of here. One that I already got in there. And let's just pull that up. Okay, there's an image. So we're going to do some things to it. So first, let's go ahead and just say we want to hide that image. This is going to be similar to one of the assignments that's in the platform. So if you did it, you probably know what I'm about to do. So let's just go ahead and choose the image and say .click. When we click it, what do we want to do? Let's go ahead and hide the image. Alright, so save that. Refresh this, everything's running. So when I click this image, it should hide. Perfect. So it's doing what we want it to do. But now let's go ahead and make this a little bit more dynamic. We have a button here already. Let's go ahead and say whenever we click the button, let's add another image to that div. So we'll just say, okay, click the button, choose the container, and we'll append. What are we going to append? We'll append image. Oops. Okay, save that. Let's make sure this works. So we'll refresh. That still works. Click. Oh, what did I miss? Button dot click button container. That's container. Oh, probably, hopefully that. Click. There it is. Okay, so now it's working. So I added some jQuery functionality to the click button. Every time I click it, I'm going to append an image to this div. Now I still have the whole image.hide thing, so every time I click them, adds more. When I click on the image, it hides. It selects the image tag. That's why I have my selector for hide, so that's why it hides all of them. But let's check out what happens. So I add a couple. Let's click on one of these new images. If you hear my mouse clicking, absolutely nothing is happening. Nothing happens on this picture. When I go to this picture, all of a sudden it works.
Need to listen on those other two images.
Right. So basically, we have two types of content on this page. There's the static content and the dynamic content. The static, just like static, just means it's already there. It's always there. It doesn't go away. Dynamic, just meaning it's something new. It can change. It can get altered somehow. Now in jQuery, the way this document.ready works, it basically, the browser parses through everything, runs it all, and then once this whole document is ready, then it runs all this function. So this only picks up everything that exists on the page when it got originally loaded up. Those new images were dynamically added to the page and therefore didn't exist when this document was originally ready. So it doesn't know to listen for these click events on those images because it doesn't even know that they exist. So this is where something new comes into play called document.on. This is going to be a little different syntax than document.ready, but still we're choosing the entire document. And this time, instead of saying after it's ready, we're just saying, hey, stay on. Listen for something on this document dynamically. So here, instead of just writing a function really quick, we have to tell it, okay, what are you listening for specifically? And here, it's when we're clicking an image. So first is the listener, and then second, what they call target. Well, what are you listening for that on? And here we're listening for it on the image, and then we run whatever function we want. And so we'll say, okay, just keep listening for the document, and any images that pop up dynamically, when someone clicks on it, go ahead and just hide the image. Okay, so actually we shouldn't even need this now. Save that. Go ahead and refresh. There's the image. The hide still works. Let's go ahead and add some images. Still works. So now, even though these are dynamic, the document.on is constantly listening for them, and they now disappear. Now, what if we wanted to choose a specific image and only hide the image that we actually clicked on? Well, how can we differentiate between it? One way is to, for every single new image we put on there, give it a unique identifier. Or there's this thing that you're going to get familiar with over the next few months called this. This is something used in a lot of different places, and it's basically saying this being whatever triggered the event, whatever this was that you specifically clicked on. So we're going to say document.onClickImage. Any image that's clicked, instead of just choosing all the images, we'll just say this. And let's go ahead and refresh, run that. Okay, now it's kind of hard to tell because they're all the exact same identical image, but it is only deleting or hiding the specific one that I clicked on.
So you can click out a border and it'll just hide the one so you have multiple.
Yeah, so let's just say if somehow, let's see, how can we differentiate between them? So let's make this image. Do I have any other images in this folder?
Is it deleting and then shifting it over?
Yeah, everything. Once everything hides, it basically hides it from your document object model. So just like when you're doing your CSS styling, you have inline block. It basically doesn't even know something exists. So whatever was next to it, or if something didn't have enough room to be next to it, now it does, it'll automatically go up there because as far as it knows, that object doesn't exist in document object model. Which, speaking of the document object model, the DOM, which some of you may have heard about, basically a browser converts this whole document into an object. And that's what allows jQuery and JavaScript to pick certain parts and pieces and manipulate them. And just to show it, we can actually go in the browser here and just log, console.log the document, and this is what it is. So document is this whole thing. And this is pretty much what you saw in your elements when you inspect element. But you can, this is what allows you to manipulate it. Kind of like the 190 example I saw on platform. You can save it into a variable. So say body equals document.body. Or that's just for a show difference. So body is a child of document. So if we logged document.body, notice instead of the whole document, it's just logging the body part of that document. So let's go back. Save that into a variable. In fact, let's go ahead and do this. Let's go jQuery.com, inspect element, console. We can do the same thing here. And here's the entire document, all the crazy stuff it's got. Save that into a variable. Alright, and now let's say body.innerHTML equals our site sucks. I just overwrote jQuery.com completely. So just manipulating the object here. Obviously, same thing when you were working with inspect element for your CSS stuff. Once I refresh, it comes back. So that is manipulating the DOM. Like I said, today this is going to be a little short because that's really pretty much most of what I need to talk about. Learning this and understanding what this means is going to help you out because, like I said, that'll come up again over the next few months in different languages too. Document.on. Just remember that any dynamically rendered content didn't exist when it first started, so document.ready won't work. You will need document.on. And that's pretty much it. So let me first stop this recording because we don't need to go over that.